There are things in this world we cannot explain, something hidden just beyond our view. Journey with us as we attempt to pierce the veil between our world and theirs. Join us as we pass through the doorway to the dead.
Join us at WLFE-DB.com for upcoming shows and so much more.
All right. Hello, everyone. Tonight, I'm going solo. Want to welcome everyone in. Dave had an opportunity come up today to partake of the Ravens football game down in Baltimore with his dad. And so, obviously with, his father and stuff, you got to take advantage of it while you can. So we wish him well. I was trying to get Lori on for this week, but she didn't get back to me. She expressed interest on coming back on the show. So hopefully we'll get her for the next show for 2 weeks. I don't know. We just weren't able to hook up. So anyhow, I'm gonna go over a bunch of stuff. We've had a lot going on. I wish everyone well. We've been having some wonderful weather here. Yesterday we tried to do a live feed from a site from Antietam battlefield. This was just a few days ago. Today being the 19th or 17th was the 159th anniversary of the Battle of Antietam. That was September 17th, 1862. Now, let me see. Oh, here's the private chat. Let me key that so I can see. So I guess I don't have anybody coming in yet. No comments. Here we go. All right. So John McGinnis, you're the first one in, buddy. This was just the last few days was the 159th anniversary of the Battle of Antietam. And so we found out my wife's cousin has a property right there at what's known as the Upper Bridge in Washington County, Maryland, where the battle took place. That, by the way, that county was the first county designate in the United States with the term Washington. So while there's a lot of Washington counties, that was the first in the country with that designate. So anyhow, let's see. Okay. So anyhow, that he has a property adjoining what's known as the Upper Bridge. In 1830, between 1830 and 1860, Washington County built some 30 of these stone bridges. They were all very similar in design. They're very similar in size. The most famous of which is, of course, Burnside's Bridge from the battle. But anyhow, with that in mind, they have a property right there adjacent to the Upper Bridge. Now, they had told us it wasn't heavily trafficked. These bridges are all in use today by the community, and it's still very much farmlands. If anybody's not familiar with that area, it's virtually unchanged from when the battle occurred. It's still largely farmlands. You've got Hagerstown is very close by, but you haven't had any major building or building up. The town of Sharpsburg is very small. Keep in mind, during the Civil War, the South generally used the terminology of a creek or a river nearby the battle to describe the battle. So in Confederate records, it's known as the Battle of Antietam. In Union records, it's known as the Battle of Sharpsburg, same battle. That would be true like Stones River and Murfreesboro and things like that. But anyhow, the area is virtually unchanged. So it's really neat when you get down there. The only thing different from when that battle occurred is some of the sight lines and some of where the woods are have either receded or come forward. But anyhow, so we went down there, and unfortunately, we're in like a depression on the backside of the battle. We're about 1 mile as the crow flies to the actual scene of the battle. The cornfield is no more than a little over a mile up onto the right. The back actions where they attacked to the east woods and Jackson's group. Anyhow, those areas are all right there. So we had heard from the resident of the house. There had been a local reputation that the house was haunted. And in addition to that, it's not real popular with a lot of the paranormal groups, but evidently some groups have gone there and done some investigation. So we figured everybody sort of had the itch. It's been a while since we went out. So we went to set up. We were trying to do a live feed, but unfortunately there is like virtually no reception down there, internet and whatever. So the live feed was not successful. Dave did take some pictures and some stuff, which we'll later post up. And it was pretty neat. Before we got in and around the bridge area, we actually, I went up and had sort of a private tour of some of the areas of the battlefield. And as we're going through there, I'm using the system on the phone where you get the Ovilus reads, and so anyhow, it was corresponding. Matter of fact, I had sent some. Let me see what's going on here. It might. I don't know, huh? Oh, okay. There, now we're okay. Now I'm wanting Sandy, Theo. Hey guys. Yeah, I was driving. This is probably around 6:30, 6:30, right before dusk. I'm driving around the battlefield, and I'm using that Ovilus, on the phone, that free app you can get. And here's some of the words that are coming through. I'm picking up paralysis, decapitated, assault, get ready, struck, hands off. As we got up near the cornfield, it was giving me almost there. And just as we entered the edge of the east woods, it gave me Thomas Jackson. That was Stonewall Jackson's position. Graveyard, bled, carry the day, veterans, funeral, struck came up several times, cannons, bled. So anyhow, the Ovilus obviously was pretty aware that I was there in a battlefield. They had, a number of general soldiers were killed there, and they had the cannons stuck upside down where they fell. To give you a little insight, which I really wasn't that familiar, that particular area, the upper bridge, while there was no actual fighting there, the fighting is just up on the ridge. And oh, good, Jerry's out of Facebook jail. Anyhow, it looks like on the night of the 16th, they moved troops. McClellan was actually with General Hooker, moved troops across this upper bridge, moved one of his corps. As he did so, then Hooker was a chronic complainer. He's complaining that he's the only Union men on that side of the Antietam Creek with Lee. So to reinforce him, he sent General Mansfield over that bridge as well. So 2 of the 5 corps were on that side of the creek in that lower bed. What they basically did, where the bridge is, and just up from the bridge is the Little Antietam Creek, which also has some of these stone bridges across it. So the troops crossed over there in a low area on the creek and also at the bridge. So you had basically almost half of the Union positions crossed over there. They went up. It's like I said, it's down in sort of a lower depth. They went up the ridge and they could actually see the southern positions. So they knew where Lee was, just above them. And they pulled back. It was rainy on the 16th. So they pulled back down to those encampment areas. And actually, at the time, as you come over the bridge, there's a road that cuts to the left and takes you right up into a major portion of the battlefield. But there's also a road that was there at the time that goes up toward the right. And that's the one the troops basically initiated at. When they got up there, then they swung off, and because they were moving away. Now, most historians believe that McClellan really didn't intend to fight Lee there. This action of moving his troops over to an attempt to flank Lee was to do so to sort of force Lee off of the field. And Lee really didn't intend to fight him there because he had his men in Harper's Ferry and other places. So he was trying to bide some time to get his army back together. But it's interesting, the troops went up, they ascertained and knew where the Confederate positions were for the most part, and then they came back down into those areas. The morning of the 17th, it was very foggy, misty. And so as they moved up early in the morning, I mean, this is like 6 in the morning, 5:36, the Union troops were on the move up in the higher fields. And literally, you couldn't really see anyone. And then, of course, they ran into each other, and then the fighting started. It was that particular day is the bloodiest day in American history as far as casualties from war and conflict on a single day. And then it set a whole chain of events off. But the really neat thing is, you've never been to Antietam, to really go there, it's virtually unchanged from when they actually confronted the battle. Now, the interesting thing is, where Gettysburg seems to have so much activity and things related to the battle, Antietam tends to be pretty quiet. There are reports and people have picked up stuff over the years. But I know I had done Antietam 4 or 5 times in investigations before I got my first EVP. And it was only recently where we really had a neat conversation. Mike Simpson was with me, and my sister and her husband. And we were doing a phasma box in the Sunken Road. Sunken Road was horrendous. There were more casualties in this small little, I don't know, it's not even a football field in length, but in that 100 yards, 100 and so yards, there were more casualties than on D-Day for the U.S. Army. It was a horrendous scene. But anyhow, I was doing a phasma box session down there in the pit, and we picked up a soldier named Caleb, who was from one of the North Carolina groups, and he was killed there. and his sister was there. She had evidently came up. They were from Chapel Hill area, and she had recovered his body. And those two talked with us for about 20 some minutes, and we've got this interesting recordings with a real Southern twang, and they're talking about didn't talk about the battle. They talked about themselves and their lives back home. I wasn't under any impression that Caleb didn't realize he was gone. And he didn't answer us as to whether or not he had passed over, but I'm assuming he had. But anyhow, so we started last evening, and when we got down there, we started picking up on the K2s. This is at the far side of the bridge. Whenever I was mentioning General Mansfield, my K2s were going to red. We had a couple of them there because somebody else had one too, and they would swing up to red and then go back. And we did that for a good 15 minutes where I would be baseline 1 dot green. As soon as we mentioned General Mansfield, would go to red. Now, we're not saying we were contacting General Mansfield, but we were under the impression that it was some group leader in his thing. Good news is we had Haley with us last night. First time we've been together since all the COVID stuff, and she was picking up a lot of interesting items. There's a small little, it's maybe 30, 40 feet to the edge of the creek. We had set up some REM pods and stuff down there, and they were picking up hits all over, but that wasn't related to the Civil War. What Haley was picking up on and seemed to be in reply to her questions was it was a child 6 years old that had drowned there in the river. It's really nice. That area of the Antietam Creek is wide. It's got a little depth to it. Tubers go through there and kayakers. And I'm sure going back in the day, it was a popular swimming hole. And evidently this was a young child that had drowned there, was asking for its grandmother, a lot of terms along those lines. And Haley was picking up on that. So it was interesting. The problem with that area is, God, it was a lot of traffic. There was a lot of, so EVPs are very difficult there. Activities there. I'd like to go back, and that's Haley joining in. Yeah, we enjoyed having you, Haley. It was good seeing you again. And we'll have to try that place back. Maybe later in the season, it won't be quite as busy because this is still pretty busy area farming wise. But there was a lot of energies there. I was picking up on a lot of the pathos. I was really picking up on the anxieties of the boys and the soldiers there, and sort of like it was the day before the battle. And here they are thinking they're hundreds of miles from home, don't know anybody, like, what the hell am I doing here? And then, really, I think there's so many of those young men who felt that was going to be their last night on earth. And that was really picking up. So it was sort of unpleasant with that kind of a high anxiety and pathos. Yeah, Haley, pop up any comments on that. I appreciate it. Haley was with us last night. So Haley, yes, if you would kindly key up anything, any impressions you had from last evening, the people can see them, and I'll highlight them. So it'll show up right on the thing. So yeah, whatever comments you have about that. I do want to mention the equipment company Ghost Stop. We always like to mention when people treat you right. I know there's a lot of manufacturers of equipment right now. Some are better than others. Some are pretty difficult to work with. We've purchased stuff from both Ghost Augustine and Ghost Stop, and they've both They really stand by their equipment. We had another GS2 that went up. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they wound up replacing us with a brand new GS2, and they've made some renovations to the GS2 now, so you can alter the field. That's the one where you set up the grid and you have a little dial face, and it actually, as spirits manifest, they come up on dots on it. So that's pretty neat as far as picking up. We've had some experiences before where the spirits have identified their numbers with us, and we've been able to see that with the GS2 and verify it. And then, like, say, one of them leaves and states they're leaving, and then we see one of the dots goes away. So anyhow, I want to credit their company for standing by their product. Wasn't a cheap product, so I'm really glad we got one that works. In my notes for doing this. Another thing I wanted to mention about some stuff going on. We are also in the process over there at the Hoover House. I guess about 10 years ago, they used to have a ghost and history walk over in Waynesboro. And the gentleman who did that, he's gotten up there in his years and he just can't get around. The one was about a 1 mile walking tour. And so he was gracious enough to present us with a lot of the information. So we're sort of expanding on that, and we hope to shortly reinstitute that Waynesboro Ghost Walk. And Steve, being the entrepreneur that he is, he's even trying to get it so we might even have a mobile walk. In other words, instead of a walk, it might be a bus unit to take you around to the sites, and probably we'll try to negotiate with some of the places that we can get in for a short period. So getting some great history on the area. And I just thought a couple of the cases, stuff that's in and around the Waynesboro area, might be of interest to anybody tonight. The one, and I had not heard this before, it was called Exploding Graves. Hagerstown, Maryland is only maybe 15 miles or so from Waynesboro. And in Hagerstown, very famous cemetery called Rose Hills Cemetery. It's really neat. If you haven't been there before, it's a cool place. They actually have a lot of the Confederate soldiers buried from the Battle of Antietam there in Rose Hill. The Antietam, there are a few Confederates up there in the National Military Park in Antietam. Most of those are Union soldiers. The Union actually offered to bury the Southern soldiers there, but the South didn't want that. So they're buried in a lot of the local cemeteries, other than the military cemetery there in Antietam. And Rose Hill's one of those. They had dedications there by a number of notables, including Eisenhower and General Fitzhugh Lee when he was governor of Virginia, when they were doing some of the reinterments of some of the Southern soldiers that died in those conflicts. He dedicated that area. They've got a large portion of that set aside for those. I've walked around there on a nice day, and Jerry, we still got to get in there. While the weather's nice, maybe we go up there this week one day. I'll give you a buzz, but just go up there and you walk around. It's generally the road noise isn't so bad because it's a big cemetery and you can get far off the road. And I've picked up some great EVPs in there. But anyhow, there's a ghost story about that I had never heard. In July of 1975, the aging caretaker of Hagerstown Rose Hill Cemetery stumbled across a nasty, unexplainable surprise. At first, he was sure it was a case of vandalism, but it turned into a disturbing mystery. The grave of a 3-year-old who had been buried in 1912 seems to have exploded. The headstone was moved aside, and the sod around the grave seemed to have been heaved up, and a hole had been created down to the sarcophagus, which had been shattered into several separate pieces. Police and cemetery officials had absolutely no explanation for the disturbance. Their conclusion was that whatever caused the mess had come from down below and not from up above. The child was temporarily removed and found to be in an amazingly good condition, obviously the body of the child. After the reinterment, nothing further disturbed the child's final sleep. So I thought that was an interesting case, something from inside the ground. Now that area's got a lot of caves. So I don't know if it had to do with some karst formation. And then, Jerry, if you care to add some comments on this, they talked about Jacob's Church, which is, Miller's Church Road. And that's if you leave out of Waynesboro, just a little into the Maryland line, you come across what's known as Jacob's Church Cemetery. It's found on Miller's Church Road. On the cemetery grounds once stood a one-story brick Lutheran church built in 1841, which replaced an earlier church made of logs. In the 1730s, this brick church was believed to be used in satanic rites. The church had been severely vandalized and burned to its foundation. The cemetery itself is quite eerie. Many stones had been knocked down, shattered, or defaced. The earliest readable markers are engraved in German and are dated into the early 1790s. Legend has it that satanic sacrifices were made here and that at least one lynching took place in the nearby woods. Visitors have reported the whispers of children and the screams of women. Several visitors report a mechanical clanking in the woods in the fall of the year, and at least one visitor had his pocket rifled by an unseen hand. Paranormal group out of West Virginia took some spectacular photos of all kind of various anomaly rocketing about the graveyard. This is a sacred place that has undergone severe emotional upheaval. If you visit the place at night, be careful. And if you see a hearse gliding by on the road nearby, pay it no mind. A resident owns it and likes to scare off people at night. So I know Jerry's been to the place. They actually have converted it in years past to a one of those haunted houses that they run around the Halloween period. But evidently, there's a lot of activity there in and around the cemetery, and that's a place we got to get over and check out too. I made some notes here for tonight. Now, I didn't realize another cool thing is evidently we talk about what allows energy to be maintained in a given area. I know when they look at Gettysburg Battlefield, all of the limestone quartz, it's around everywhere. There's huge boulders of Devil Den and up into the hillside, and then all them little creeks and that abound in and around the area. So you've got that limestone action with the water, and you've got sort of a perfect energy mold there. So anyhow, Waynesboro, where the Hoover House is, evidently it is the whole underground of that is a giant cave. And over the years, as they've gone to build various things, they broke into the cave. When the first sheets store they built there, those gas stores, when they blew it, they found a beautiful cave with all kind of formations. When they were dynamiting to build the hospital, they also blew another portion of the cave. There's some rumors that those passages run for great distances up into the South Mountain. Maryland's only commercial cave is probably like only 15 miles away. And I know there's a ton of minor caves we used to do when I was in high school in and about the area. Back in the 1800s, they actually had some of the areas were so large under Waynesboro with the caves that in the summertime, they often had church services in the caves for the coolness. I guess they would bring down some torches and stuff, light it up. So anyhow, I didn't realize that it looks like the whole town's over one big giant karst formation with all these caves. I don't know that any of them are open now, but the caves play an integral part. A lot of the buildings on Main Street at one point or another in their history had access to some of the cave passage. And so the people would in their basement have that open for storing fruits and vegetables over the years or other things, particularly before the refrigerators came into play. Another thing is a number of these caving shelters, and it's pretty well documented, were involved in the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad, of course, ran in those couple decades before the Civil War, where you had the strong abolitionist movement and those against slavery in the country were working to basically free the slaves or help slaves get free from the southern states. And so as they would travel about, there would be contacts or routes to give them safe contact from point to point. I know where we live in Chambersburg, we had a lot of activity in the Underground Railroad. Waynesboro did as well, and evidently these caves were an integral part of what occurred with Waynesboro. So we've got a number. Actually, they had worked up 3 separate tours in Waynesboro for both the history and the ghosts. Some of those buildings are rumored to have, 8 or 9 ghosts, and there's a whole bunch of neat stories concerning them. Here's the one I was reading. This is pretty cool. One of the other B2Bs in Waynesboro is known as Rose Manor. So it was an assisted living facility since 1991. Before that, it was the Anthony Wayne Hotel, which was destroyed by a large fire in the town, 1976. Mrs. Hockensmith reports that Rose Manor's occupation of the old hotel, strange things happen around the clock. And she had on several occasions called in psychic investigators to get to the bottom of the incidents. The kitchen is so eerie that few employees are willing to descend the stairs to the basement. In the kitchen, lights and the radio often turn themselves on and off. Employees often mention being brushed by something cold. Before anyone occupied the facility, the elevator would travel up and down on its own. And at times, all the security cameras would stop working altogether. Oftentimes, they would hear a dog running the halls on every floor. This was captured on film, yet no dog could ever be found. The director herself had heard a disembodied voice calling for help me. The weirdest thing of all has to do with room 215. In the 1970s, a drug runner who was trying to escape capture leaped from an upper window and anyhow wound up electrocuting himself on some electric wires just outside his window. Since then, Rose Manor has had 3 residents of that room who independently expressed a desire to commit suicide by jumping out of the window. None of these residents knew anything about the drug dealer's death. So I thought that was an interesting case. Probably none of those people are still alive because this, like I said, this walk is probably like 12 years old now. But we're going to give it a shot, sort of promoting the history. And we've got a little fire pit in the front. And we've put out some benches and stuff, and it might be fun. And like I said, Steve, working with all of his stuff, he's probably trying to pop that up more. Waynesboro, from its history point, also has some neat stuff that I'd never heard of, and I'm sort of researching. One is that one of the first American-made cannons used in the Revolutionary War came from Waynesboro. There's also a Civil War recipient of the Medal of Honor came from Waynesboro. And I'm not sure who this is, but evidently whoever accepted Sitting Bull's surrender after Little Bighorn came from Waynesboro. The town was under Confederate control. Sometimes it says 10 to 15 days. It was in June 23rd of 1863. Keep in mind, Battle of Gettysburg occurred on July 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So this is roughly about a little over a week before Battle of Gettysburg. Some advanced units of General Early's troops got into Waynesboro, and they took over the town hall. That was his headquarters. And they often said the term skedaddle has its derivation from Waynesboro, where that they used it to describe the way the townspeople fled the town when the Confederates were advancing. So anyhow, then he put the town under martial law. And while Lee had strict orders that there would be no looting of personal property, that was not true of anything that they could use in their war effort. So the commercial and industries in and about Waynesboro got hit pretty heavily, and whatever the Confederates could use in the war effort, they basically took. So, but the people were spared. I did some research and I found that evidently there was only one citizen, I think, in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, I'm not counting about, but I'm sorry, one citizen in Waynesboro who wound up being accidentally killed by Confederates. So, by and large, the people, were not exposed to any kind of violence. And actually, the women were ordered to make their bread and their pies, and the Confederates eagerly ate them and all. So anyhow, and Waynesboro lies about 2 miles north of the Mason-Dixon line. And we're just sort of really getting into a lot. I know it's going to be a busy October coming up. So anyhow, we've got probably this year, I don't know that we're going to be able to have any time to really get in a neat investigation or not. Okay, Haley, let me punch this up here. So evidently, Haley's very familiar with the York, Pennsylvania area, and they had a lot of looting and that associated with the Gettysburg Campaign as well. We're going to try to next year. We've got a couple of places we'd really like to get to. So we will be having several investigations out of the state. Hopefully, with the, if COVID can stay at bay so it doesn't become an issue, we're going to pursue and start to set up a couple of those areas and try to set that up. I know we've got some really good friends who are even looking at potential of moving into the area next year. And so we might be able to expand our group by a couple people. And I need that for Dave. Dave needs some relief. I'm afraid my physicality is getting pretty rough. Last night I had my rollator and it wasn't too bad, but God, my legs were just so trashed. So I unfortunately, I think my days of getting out and doing heavy duty investigation are sort of coming to an end, and I'm going to probably be more processing this stuff. We're so far behind everything. It just obviously the Hoover House has taken a great deal of time and energy. We're currently working on fixing the front porch on that. It's always something. It's an old place, but it's got its own real charm. But we still intend to get out to a couple neat places, and it's sort of tough. I don't want everything falling on Dave, so hopefully Haley gets better. Haley says she'll get a scooter for me. I try to do everything I can. It's just, I don't think I'm doing the greatest at beating old man time. But such is life. Really sorry. I was really hoping that we'd have Lori on tonight, but then maybe that worked out for the best since things worked up for Dave to get to the game with his dad. So hopefully we'll be able to get in touch with Lori and get her set up, because I know everybody seems to really enjoy that. Is anybody out there got any kind of investigations or that going on lately? So if you do, please let me know. I know want to also send out our sympathies and our condolences to a good friend of ours. I don't know, it just seemed to, with social media, you're sort of really aware of everybody, even though it might not be somebody you see on a regular basis. But I know a good friend of ours, Miss Lola Carr, she had a loss in their family and stuff. So we certainly we want to send out our deepest sympathies for that. We had, I guess, a story I relate, which was pretty interesting. I told Haley about this last night. My son had been, it's a couple months ago now, I guess. My son had been diagnosed with lymphoma here a couple months ago, and we weren't sure how significant it was, what staging or whatnot. So they had ordered a full body scan to determine the level of the cancer and stuff. In the meantime, almost immediately, we had at the Hoover House, we had my deceased son come through, and he basically wanted to tell me that the results of the scan would be encouraging. And it wasn't but a couple days after that my mother came through, and she basically had the same message. And finally, a couple days after that, my son came back through and gave me a hug and verified that same message again. And so when we finally had the full scan and all, turned out my son was in stage 1. So they were, instead of having to go chemo and everything, they were able to they're going to do radiation. So anyhow, Spirit was right on that. I wasn't sure if I was reading something into it or not, but that was pretty cool. Sandy evidently is doing the Emory Theater in Cincinnati. That's one I have not done. And John is at here. Oh, that's right. Next here. That's right. Next Saturday's the world largest ghost hunt. We're not participating in that this year. Turns out my mother-in-law is having her 90th birthday. So we've got a big family celebration in play there at the Hoover House, and people coming from out of state and all that stuff. So instead of getting into the paranormal next Saturday, we're just going to have a family hoedown, celebrate her 90th birthday. And then here's Sandy is doing the Emory Theater next weekend. That's an idea too. We were talking with someone the other day, and ideas about where people's favorite places or a place that they're really interested in getting in and investigating. So if anybody has a place they'd like to go see and all that, by all means throw it up there. Jerry's talking about his house. He's got a bunch of spirits like that. Yeah, they have addressed the bees, Jerry. Yes, they have. So Haley says she's doing this Prospect Hill Cemetery in York. Tournaments from every American war and local ghost stories to boot. I think you've told me about that before. See, I think I'm going to get back more into some of the. Okay, that's a good question. Haley, you want to pop up and tell us what cradle graves are? So I know, I think most all the Octobers are keyed up with investigations and stuff. I haven't really got a listing of those. Let's see. Oh, I know. There was one other interesting story here. There's evidently a location in and around the Waynesboro area called Durr's Hill, Derr. It says many folks grew up on ghost stories, and most of them have some basis in fact. Wandering into the woods at night could be interesting, as you never knew what you might run into. If you care to explore Durr's Hill east of town, there are 2 legends you might want to know about. The first involves a gentleman who dresses in outdated clothing. This unsubstantial spirit is apparently wandering around looking for one of the boundary markers that has been moved. At some earlier date, a trickster must have hid the markers, and apparently the specter cannot rest until it's replaced. One reportedly humorous encounter with the ghost walk went like this. A local stumbled across the distraught spirit carrying his ghostly stone. The spirit approached him and intoned, "What shall I do with this? What shall I do with this?" To which the frightened local replied, "Put the damn thing back where you found it, then turn and ran like demons were after him." The second legend involves an elderly gentleman who protects locals by throwing stones at them. The story goes that one evening the fellow crossed a section of friendly creek called the Fording. A log lay across the creek, off of which he stumbled and fell into the water, lantern and all. He was found drowned the next day. From then on, whenever children tried to go swimming in that portion of the creek, they would find themselves showered with small pebbles, the gift of a ghost who wished to prevent others from sharing his own fate. So they were two interesting stories I came across. Okay, now here's Haley, Cradle Graves. Now it's interesting the variety of graves down on the outskirts of Petersburg, Virginia. There's a Bradford church, and that particular graveyard is known because the one little chapel in there, it was made in honor of the Southern soldiers in the Southern states that fought in that war. And the beautiful stained glass in the chapel, it's a small chapel, but it's all Tiffany. It's all original Tiffany glass, priceless. And they have put Lexar and things around it so it can't be damaged. But anyhow, when you go there, you'll see the stones laid out like a table, most of them the size of a picnic table, and probably 4 feet off of the ground, 3.5, 4 feet off of the ground. And basically what they did in those cases is on Sundays after church, people would make up dinner. They'd go out to the cemeteries to pay honor to their ancestors and their relatives. And anyhow, you could scoot a chair or whatever right underneath the marker, and you put it, and there was your picnic table. You pay, and then now they're inscribed, so the name of the individual and all the pertinent information is on the top of that stone. But the stone's laid out like a giant picnic table, and so family would go out there and basically spend the Sunday having a meal at the graveside of their loved one, and that was very common practice. That Bradford church is also credited for being the first Memorial Day. They in that area that evidently it became a situation where on a certain period the school kids would take flowers and whatnot and go out and adorn the graves of the Confederates that had passed away in the war with flowers or small little flags or whatever. And somebody passing through sort of saw what was going down and expedited on that. Yeah, really felt great to get out last night, though. It's good seeing Haley again. Glenn Williams was with us. We were running the Phasma box. Can't say we really got too much going on that. That was interesting K2 action. on the with that one soldiers and that. And then Haley was getting a lot of action down with the REM pods and that near the creek's edge with the little child. Haley, any particular impressions or stuff that you felt from last night? Oh, okay. Jerry said at Rose Hill, they also have those tabletop grave sites where they would come in and post up. God, it's just been so long since I've been out doing my graveyard sessions. I got to get back to that. I guess, the Hoover House is just taking up doing a lot of investigation, but I guess most of it's been there, and I just haven't been out in my old routines. I'd really like to get out there and get about. I think I can still get around okay with my wool later. So trying to think. Really haven't come into any new equipment that seems to be a gotta have. I mean, it seems that right now most of this stuff is just a redo of equipment that's already out there. Well, tell you what, let me go ahead and punch this in. Take a break here. I'll try to do this without screwing everything up. As you know, I'm not the most technical guy, so let me see if I can. I went ahead and broadcast. Let me see here. I want grand. Okay, grand. Okay. Click on black again.
WLFE Digital Network is now on digital television. If you're into ghosts, Bigfoot, UFOs, and the creepy, then WLFE has a TV channel for you, Paranormal View. Watch all of your favorite WLFE video talk shows on one channel. Shows like Paratalk Radio, Step Into the Paranormal, Skeptical Help Bar, The Creepy Parlor, and more. Looking for something else? Do you support the LGBTQ plus community? WLFE has brought all of their LGBTQ shows like Inside the Drag Closet, Everything Yet Nothing, Across the Pond, and Rainbow Soul all into one place. A new TV channel called LGBTQ Friends. The third channel is a Variety Unlimited. Here you'll find a wide variety of talk shows you know and love, like Just Cindy, Card Pulls and Coffee, Real Talk with Dom, The Bipolar DMs, Meet the Author, and Movie Review 5. The best part of watching these shows is that they're all available to watch at one location, one website, WLFE-DB.com.
You are listening to WLFE-DBRadio.com, where our shows are your shows.
Listen to the WLFE-DB podcast, available on Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Check out shows like Paratalk Radio, Inside the Drag Closet, and Step Into the Paranormal. Now, on to your favorite podcast app.
This is Dominic Santasero with Real Talk with Dom. You are listening to WLFE-DBRadio.com, where our shows are your shows.
Hey guys and dolls, this is Casey DeVille, the better half of DeVille Inc., Baltimore, Maryland. If you're ever in Baltimore, stop in and see me and Tony. Invisible Bree, 5920 Eastern Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21224. Give us a call if you're in the area at 408-400-9641, or look us up on the web at DeVilleInc.com. DeVille Inc., where we specialize in you.
Oh, yeah. Life just got sweeter now that WLFE DB has merchandise. Show your support by purchasing your t-shirts for WLFE, Paratalk Radio, Inside the Drag Closet, and more. But it doesn't stop there. T-shirts, coffee mugs, tanks, buttons, cloth bags, and more. Go to WLFE-DB.com. On the top bar, click on the merchandise tab and bam, there you go. You got merch. Support the shows. WLFE-DB.com.
You're listening to WLFE DB Radio. Now, back to our program.
All right. Well, we've navigated that. sorry. I'm just not the best today. Yes. I think I started picking up a cold or something yesterday, and just really not been sort of rough day for me. Nothing COVID or nothing like that. Just some sniffles and junk like that. But anyhow, this is I guess I think what I'm going to do is spend a little time talking about some facets of what we're learning over at the Hoover House and what I consider the direct communication with spirits over there. I have to say that since we've been involved with that, a lot of, like I said, I sort of got away from a lot of the investigating we used to do. Not that I don't enjoy it, but it seems we hook up with spirits where they're very receptive to question and answer sessions. We've really learned a lot. I sort of keep a record going of a lot what we've had there. Let me get here we go. Let me get here we go. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we have. Okay, I'm going to post this up. This is from last night. Haley posts, I got a nice welcoming from a Southern soldier. Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that. I do think there were a lot of different energies, the shifting of which were really fast. We go from the little guy to a Union soldier back to something from another time period. Definitely interesting, just difficult to hold on to one particular energy. I totally agree with that assessment, Haley. And then when she says the nice welcoming from a Southern soldier, that obviously is tongue in cheek. I guess he sort of was aware of Haley's sentiments, and so he wasn't mincing words. And yeah, Haley showed this before. It's a young girl from her grandfather's store in his basement, and see if Haley can pick up something from that picture. So next time we have you both over at the house, you have to come up, Jerry, and show her that. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. We were getting reactions with several of the generals that were present in and about that bridge. Yeah, thank you, Haley, for those comments. But yeah, I guess for me, this just speaking for myself, the personal communication that we've had, um, hooking up families with their departed persons, um, it's just been real special. I mean, as I related that story about how both my son and my mother came through to me and were giving me clues as to what was going on with my other son, my living son. Um, I'm totally into it. I mean, I really had no doubts. I didn't say anything to my son at the time because not that he would blow it off or anything, but just, I didn't want to, I guess I didn't want to build him up too much and then have it maybe that it wasn't so. But we're finding set some rather set things. A couple of the things to run through for anybody who uh, to summarize, I guess we're finding that for the most part, when people pass away, at some point in there is a difference in time. Some people can be open and communicating within weeks of their passing. For most of them, it seems to be a more accentuated period where getting more like 6 months to a year. But we had a young girl who died in a real tragic auto accident come through within 3 weeks of her passing. And she had a message for a friend. It also seems like when we pass, that we have a sincere desire to reestablish or be accepted and loved by our family members that are still living. It seems that people maybe who haven't spoken for years over whatever, an argument, hard feelings, misunderstanding, when the person passes, they become quite aware, I guess, of the fullness and see things in a pure light, maybe a better understanding. And as such, the first thing they want to do is sort of reestablish some interpersonal relation with that person that who's living. And while they're in total agreement, the people living oftentimes are not in as good a perspective. And so oftentimes the resistance is from the living. I know good a husband of my cousin, he had not he had gotten estranged from his whole family years ago, and really had very little communication, hadn't spoken to him in years, and most of them are gone now. And they were coming through uniformly, wanting to reestablish relation with their son, brother, whatever. And he unfortunately at the time was dealing with his own family crisis. His daughter is quite sick and battling cancer. He just wasn't in a position where he was opening that can of worms and dealing with that at the same time dealing with the emotional aspects of his daughter and her battle. So they were willing to wait. I mean, I don't know much what they could do, but it almost seems instinctively that goes on. Another thing that's interesting is that we've had, and without mentioning any names, but we've had it come up quite a few times. Let's say somebody has passed away, and maybe oftentimes it's money. The person's had some money or assets or whatever, and the family's in some kind of chutzpah about who's getting what and all that. And so there's a lot of contention in the family. And that person on the other side who's now passed, they're not at all happy about that situation. I guess for them, the money is essentially useless, and it's some external effect. And so they, they're not too keen on that. And the infighting that can go on in the families, they look on them with a great deal of disdain. Now, some of them are just have been able to eliminate themselves from it. But in other cases, when it's been a problem to that person that's passed, they've got to relieve themselves of that burden before they can actually pass through to the light and to the celestial rewards. Because I guess there's got to be an acceptance and a forgiveness, and that's oftentimes the most difficult. Another thing we found is people who have died at their own hand, whether or not it was a suicide or whether it was through like this opiate crisis and an overdose of drugs. So oftentimes they didn't really mean to take their life, and they now realize the impact of their actions on the family and the grief they've caused, the other problems and situations. And so very strong actions. They want to come, they want to be forgiven for what they put on the family. They also want to know that they're loved, and they're very sorrowful. And oftentimes it's the person coming to realize that they're forgiven for their actions. So a lot of times in these cases, the act of forgiving yourself for what you've done is oftentimes the hardest. So we actually have a couple cases we've been working on at the house where we're hoping and helping the spirits realize that the family harbors them no ill will, that they indeed do love them, and they, there isn't even a question of forgiveness or whatever. They're forgiven. So we're helping those spirits realize that so that they can pass over. Another thing we found out oftentimes is as a family's going to have a new addition, it's a grandchild or someone's having a new sibling, that oftentimes the close relatives at hand, whether it's an aunt, uncle, grandparent, passed over parent, they hold that spirit and cradle that spirit or touch that spirit in the other world before that spirit comes to earth and begins its mortality. So they're very aware of that. Now, they don't seem to like to. They don't like. Seems to be they like to play games on, like, let's say couples having a new child and they want to know the sex of that child. Spirits, they're not too big into that. They like to mess around with that, and they give a lot of false representations, and then they laugh about it later. So we found we don't trust too much whatever the spirit's going to tell us about the sex of a new entry into the family, because they like to sort of play games on that. And then later, when we'll confront them about that, they'll laugh at us. And, it's like we shouldn't have even asked that question. Spirit, a new soul is a new soul. They don't like to talk at all about any kind of time frame with someone's passing. Like if someone's dying with a terminal disease, they're not about given a time frame. They're about reinforcing the fact that loved ones are there and waiting for them, that everything's in place to receive that soul, that everything will be fine. So they'll give all kind of comfort and support along those lines, but they're not into so much about the timetable. I get this impression that there's a lot of factors that go into play, and the good Lord will know, or whatever governing power, when that proper time for the person's mortality to end will be. I don't know that if a soul's crossed over and they verify that they've crossed over and they're in the glory, let's call it that. I don't know that I've ever had any spirit relate that they're in any kind of angst or pain or any kind of suffering or anything. I mean, they're always in a really good place. They're very appreciative of so much, and they pretty much openly express love and concern. Things about eternal life, about families and the eternal nature of families, they're constantly being reinforced. And I think when you start reflecting and looking at all that, you sort of see that. You see that commonality. Um, they have told us about things in the future. The future is the future is not written in stone. There might be things that it looks like have a high probability of happening, but as to whether or not they ultimately happen, there's a lot of factors that can come into play there. And one of the factors that Spirit has told us is the power of prayer and that incessory nature that evidently our loved ones are about us on a constant basis and constantly reinforcing their presence, letting us know they're around, letting us know that things will be okay. And yet, in that framework, they oftentimes require a catalyst to be able to act in behalf of someone. And so prayer becomes that catalyst. And it's a very strong effect. So, oftentimes, especially when you see the social media and people are undergoing variety of stress, health, whatever, and they're asking for prayers or, best wishes, whatever. That's a powerful tool. It's not to be underrated. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that come in and what will happen. It's going to happen, but it really does. Prayer and that type of open display and concern for another person has a strong effect, and as allows spirit, family spirits and whatnot. Yeah, I'm going to post from Holly here. I know. That's a Holly, of course, is she's dealing with her own situation, but I think the way she finishes that really sums it up. It is a part of her lessons and strength. It truly is. Doesn't mean it's the easiest. Thanks for coming in, Sandy. Yeah, and Hale, that's a great point. Earthbound spirits, let's just say they're the most probable mischievous in the sense that you will get the less positive aspects. They may want to be a little manipulative. So yeah, that's a good point, Haley. Um, I'd really like to. I don't know what the best way to go about it would be, but since we do so many sessions there and connecting with spirit and asking them a lot of questions about life, about death, what they can tell us, um, I'd like to have some kind of vehicle where people, friends, associates, whatever, can pose a question so that when we're doing an open session with the spirits, we can inquire to them these kind of questions and maybe see what their responses are, see what they're willing and able to talk about, and if they will. I've just found it very great, very gratifying. Um, I know we had a session here. I guess it's going about 3 weeks now, where we had a Holocaust victim come through. It was a family member, and this was an individual that was killed in the Holocaust as an infant in Hungary during World War II. And wow, that was an amazing session. We really started with total zero and total darkness. It wasn't a matter of seeing the light. I mean, they were just in they were just almost enslaved by what had happened to them, and I guess just so much terrible negative energies. So we actually requested some angels and that to come in and help, and they did. We had about 5 angels present that were working for this individual. The process was about an hour and a half. Everybody at the table pretty much was having various visions, similar but all slightly different to what they were seeing as this person ultimately was able to come to the light and then pass through. We had another situation at the end of the bash. We were in the back hall at the Wyndham, and there was a number. Susan was there, and a number of people, and we sort of had an impromptu session with the table there. And Cisco had picked up earlier on a spirit of a seaman, naval kind of person in that back hallway. And she was picking up the sensation like one would have if you were on a boat and the rocking motion of the water and whatnot. And she had asked us if we could try back there at some time to make connections and see what was going on, if we could help them. And sure enough, we made contact with them. Turned out it was somebody who'd been shanghaied years ago and had died at sea. And of course, they were so upset about what had happened to them. And anyhow, we were able to pass him over, and it was sort of amazing as he was able to release a lot of the burdens, and as he was able to see the lights, he was like running at the end, and the table was pretty violently going back and forth, like in a very excessive rocking motion, as he ran to the light. And at the very end, he made like a leap into the light, and he was over. Those sessions take a lot out of you, but I don't know. It's so gratifying. I mean, one thing we're really learning is there are no secrets in death. It comes through. I'm just wondering if, with like there's that case that's going on right now with a young woman and a fiance now missing. I'm just wondering if I don't know, it might be neat this week to try to do a table session and see if Spirit would give us any insight into something like that. Hey, it just came to me. I wonder if it was giving me the idea. Patty, that's neat. We've had maybe 5 or 6 sessions so far where guardian angels have come through too. A lot of times they've come through sort of, maybe the person's going to be entering a point of their life where it's going to be difficult. And so that guardian angel's making themselves present to know, to establish some kind of relationship. We had one situation where a younger girl in her 20s, and her guardian angel came through to verify that, I guess as a young infant, she had several consecutive bouts with pneumonia and had been critical. And evidently, the guardian angel and spirits had come through at that point in her life to save her life. And they came through and basically reminded her of that. And so that was interesting. Oh, they found her this afternoon. See, I've been watching the news. Wow. Wow. Cool. Well, that's cool. Very nice. Thanks, Holly, for letting me know. Oh, that's cool. Wow, that's a weird. Yeah, that's a real remote area, and you're into all that, those areas and the missing 411 and all that stuff. People disappear there and are never heard and seen from again. So that's amazing. I'm glad for the family. Hopefully, the young man will show up. Wow. But yeah, it's I wish, I hope to be a better steward of the gift we've been given. Um, the communication seems so consistent and direct. And oftentimes, when we're doing a session, whether it's Big Dave or Steve or myself or even another person in the room, you almost get direct feeds from the spirit into your mind. You either see the names or see the faces or hear the voices, and it's like you're really tapped in. The biggest thing is obviously it is draining. It really is. And so there's times when it sometimes takes me a couple days to recover from a real emotional session in that. I really can't imagine what the psychic mediums, how they go through this on a regular basis, and they do so willingly. I have such great respect for them and what they do, and their willingness to do it. Because sometimes I find myself a little bit reluctant because I know I'm going to sort of be trashed the next day or two, and I'm not about trying to say that I've got anywhere the sensitivities and abilities of these amazing people, but I'm just saying, even from my diminished aspect, God, it takes a lot out of you. And so, the Lori Johnsons, the Katie Turners, the Tammy Knightons, even our friend Holly, um, um, Janet, Haley, God, they dealt with that their whole life. And I totally understand what a burden that can be, as well as a blessing. It is a two-edged sword. And I guess the trick is to find the proper grounding and all that. That's why, it's when they talk about haunting and spirits and all that, I don't know. To me, it almost is laughable anymore because it's such a part of your life, whether you realize it or not. Spirits are always about you. They're always they're always supporting you and assisting you in ways that we probably can't even fully comprehend. And I guess a lot of times it comes down to our own interpretation of what's going on. But it's I know the last couple years between COVID and what's going down, and I guess the open exposure we've had with the Hoover House, and learning to communicate with spirit on that higher level, it's really been significant. Um, I I don't know. I don't know how much longer I have. Sometimes that it seems very close, but it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's it's just it's an inevitability. We're all going to pass through this mortality. Hopefully, we learn some real proper lessons. I don't know that I'd want to come back through and deal with a lot of the stuff again. Hopefully, I don't have to. But and I've really been blessed in so many ways. But it's the last couple of years has been very mind altering for me, for sure. Um, I know when I can still think back to when Dave and I first got out and going on the battlefields at Gettysburg or Harper's Ferry, and how topical that was. We just to pick up a disembodied voice or to get that picture every so often. It was pretty amazing. It made your day. It was cool. It's really neat. But it's so much more than that now. Not to say that capturing a full apparition is still a thrill. Doesn't happen that much. Everything's got to be just right. And I have a feeling that a lot of that has to deal with the way it's supposed to be. Because think about it, if we knew for a fact, I mean, without any kind of questioning or whatever, it's not a matter of faith, it's not a matter of intrinsics. If you knew that you died, you had this change and all, and you just knew with all certainty, it was a done deal. It would sort of defeat the whole purpose of our mortality and our growth and our improvement and our shaping ourselves into that form of energy that is pure love and light. And that's the whole intent. And certainly we progress at those things at different levels. I know just in reflecting myself, there's just so much about this world today that to me is just an absolute turnoff. I mean, nothing wrong in having assets and being well to do and stuff, but it's all about what you do with it. I mean, I don't know. There's just so many people that are caught in just a total waste, and just really pursuing everything that doesn't really matter. And I think Spirit in the last couple of years has really helped me realize everything in such a context. I'm very deeply indebted to all the wonderful friends and associates I've met. I learned so much from all of you people and your ability and acceptance. And I hope there's still, there's still a lot of questions I have. I hope I can just pursue that. We're really Dave and I are going to try to frame out these broadcasts better so we can start presenting some of our pictures as well as our sounds and all that, because we've just got so much stuff. I got a brand new computer because I think my old one is starting to get ready to crash. So I'm trying to get the stuff off of that, get it on the new computer in the new formats, and we'll start to create some files that we can use on the show going forward. So, that's in the list of many things to be done. I still haven't even gotten out of the box yet. It's in the other room. But we've got seeing Holly here and stuff. We've still got Kane 3 to try to get in next year, and of course there's a lot of factors, things going on as to when we can do that practically. I'm seeing Patty on here. We haven't, my gosh, it's been probably 2-3 years since we've been out with Patty Kaplan. We'd love to get back to Keeley Mansion. I had sent a couple messages to Adam, but I never got a response. And, since we switched over to Ted's show, we really haven't been doing anything with Rob and Nikki, and Rob was the contact up there at Keeley. So hopefully we can get back up into Keeley again. I know Haley loves that place. That was where she first cut her teeth. Yeah, and then all that material to process and put together for Kane 3. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing that again. I remember how exciting it was when we first met you and got to learn about Kane, and the general. Holly said the general's been active lately. Wonder what that's about. Probably. Yeah, let me face that. It's probably because the shape of the country lately. It's got everybody sort of going off. Uh, yeah, and then Haley. Anna was an amazing lady up at Keeley. What a for a woman in that period, so highly educated. Um, and then Jerry still had got into Bel Air House yet. So we got a oh my gosh, just we got a lot to do. I don't know, maybe we might be able to swing some with Haley. I mean with Bel Air, Jerry. I think I think Kristen may somebody was in there recently. So I think maybe that's opened back up. Yeah, and see, Patty's had a bunch of surgeries. She's all set up now. She's the $1 million lady. So, God, if we, I'd love to be in Trans Allegheny. I think about all I could do is get in a building, and I just camp in there and let everybody else do all the periphery. And then Jerry throws up, which they've been getting really good stuff. This Bub's Brewery, know a number of groups and teams lately been getting up in there and getting some really good stuff. We gotta, it's a shame. Went over yesterday. It's been so while since we've been out, and damn, between the Hoover House and our place, we got our stuff all scattered. We never could find our one illuminator. It's here somewhere. Dave and I gotta get our crap together, man. We just it's not been good. We had stuff thrown all over the place. Then I even went in the SLS, and the charge cord wasn't in that. I've never had that happen before. I did find it, so it is charging, but we've really been a mess with our equipment. Problem is, I just for several months now, my energy is really at times been almost non-existent. Where it's all I can do to get a few things done. I'm trying a bunch of different diets and you know my homeopathics and all that, but uh, we gotta we gotta get you, Patty, down here at the Hoover House sometime too. You'd love it. You really would. We finally got Haley finally got to see the Hoover House. Yeah, we gotta. I'm gonna try to fill up the end of the year. God, I forgot too. I got an inventory came up. I got to do. We're sort of disbanded the inventory outfit, but I have one last customer trying to get a couple jobs in. Oh, that's good. Yay. Glad your SLS is finally working. You waited long enough for that. Yeah, see if Patty. Ah, I've never really. I've heard of haunted trains, and the various stories concerning haunted trains. I didn't know what's the stories about the trestles. Another thing here about that's neat. I mean, I know we have a building here in Chambersburg that looks pretty good from the outside. It actually even has a new roof on it. In the day, downtown Chambersburg was a major railroad um, transfer point. Of course, it played an integral part in the 1860 period. John Brown was in town, and he actually had carts of pikes, those metal wooden pikes, marked as Bibles that came into town right on Main Street and was used in the insurrection at Harper's Ferry. And anyhow, they had one of the old roundhouses, still exists here, and one of the local canneries that does fruits owns it. And it looks in great shape. Like I said, a new roof. Well, I talked to a worker. They no longer utilize it. Evidently, there were a few bricks or something had fallen from up top. So I guess they don't feel it's that safe. But he said they'd be in there working when they were using it for some of the canning process. And they would hear at the far end where they evidently cleaned the steam engines, they'd be cleaning the steam engines again. Well, they hadn't been cleaned in 50 years. It hadn't even been that. But he said, yeah, no, there a lot of times you'd feel people around your spirits to call. They'd hear all the steam engine stuff go off. So maybe that's all keyed into that. Now let's see what this is. Brandy Gap Tunnel. Let me write that down. Downington. Huh. Oh, Dave did tell me an interesting thing. I guess one of his old coaches, I think an old football coach from high school, was telling him about Crownsville, the mental hospital in Maryland, outside of Baltimore there. And it's really fascinating history. There's a PBS documentary about that. And yeah, Dave said, sure, it's great, but we don't know anybody connected with it. I don't know if the whole facility's closed down or just a lot of the buildings, but evidently this coach of his has some connections or works for the state of Maryland or something. So he had told him, let me see what I can do about that. So, no promises, but that would be amazing if we could get an in and some approval to do some limited investigation up at Crownsville Mental Hospital. It was created for blacks in the period. I believe it was like the 1930s, it was in the Depression eras, and they built the majority of the buildings and whatnot. Now, of course, it changed over the years, so later it took a more general population. But yeah, that was a mental hospital in Maryland that was originally created to handle the black population. So, I guess at that point, even some of the mental facilities were in a segregated basis, different time, different era. So anyhow, that popped up, and just dawned on me too. There are a couple places of we really gotta get on the roll here. I gotta get myself together. I really hope I can get some energy and get up and about because certainly there's a lot of neat places and a lot of neat work to do. And I'd love to get out again investigating with some of my old friends. And it was so good to see Haley the other night again. Um, and you know what? This week, I think I'm going to make a point of getting out one day just to do. If Jerry's still around, I'm going to contact you. Maybe we get up here to Rose Hill and run a Phasma box session, see what we can get. So I think I'm going to try that. Want to thank everybody for staying with me. Again, didn't have Dave tonight, and luckily we got through it okay. And we were planning on having Lori, so we really didn't have anything else set up in the works, and it just we weren't able to hook up with her. So hopefully we'll have her set up going forward. So anyhow, want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. Yeah, let me mention. So, want to thank everybody for joining in tonight. And hopefully we'll have Lori in 2 weeks. If not, I'll have another guest host. Maybe try to get our pet psychic back if I can't get Lori. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and close off a few minutes early here. Want to thank everybody for coming through tonight, sticking with me. Should be hopefully if the weather holds nice, we should have a couple really fine weeks coming up here to get in some investigations. Let us know if you have any questions that you'd like me to ask our spirits about the other side and inflections. And anyhow, Holly, Jerry, Haley, Patty, thank you so much for tuning in. Wish everybody well. Stay healthy. We're doing okay here. Got Melissa got back to work. My daughter had tested COVID positive here a couple weeks ago. It all stayed up in her head, and she never really got a fever, but she got the ache. She battled. It was about 4 days. She felt pretty like her butt was kicked, but she's over it. And today was her first day back to work. So nobody else came down with it. So anyhow, my best for all. Stay well, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. And hopefully we'll have Lori on. We'll post that up. And y'all take care. Good night.
Thank you for joining Dave and Jim on Doorway to the Dead. Catch us next week right here at 8 p.m. every Thursday as we open the door to paranormal discussion and more.